Hello guys, welcome back to LR Anime. Guys, please like the video and subscribe to my channel. Today is explanation of Soul Land 2 episode number 90 based on novel. So let's start. Wang Choa's aura suddenly changed when she twisted her waist for that punch, and Hu Yuhao felt as if he were really facing an actual golden dragon in that moment. The enormous fist arrived before him, driven by an unrivaled and frighteningly huge strength. This was Wang Choa's punch. They were about the same height. Wang Choa's frame was long and slender, and her fist completely covered Hu Yuhao, even temporarily dispelling his snowy dance of ultimate ice. The power of Hu Yuhao's domain couldn't even conceal his body at that moment. It wasn't hard to imagine how terrifying Wang Choa was at this instant. Hu Yuhao's Ice Empress wrath even felt a little stifled from that formidable draconic force, as if it was repressed within his body and he had no way of releasing it. The fist hadn't even reached him, but he already felt as if his body were about to break apart from that immense pressure. This was absolutely a matter of life and death. Hu Yuhao's eyes began to sparkle underneath all that pressure. His abilities were typically increasingly more explosive and ferocious when he was facing great pressure. Not even Wang Choa expected Hu Yuhao to respond in this manner in a circumstance like this. She couldn't even evade his attack, it simply wasn't possible. She dodged Hu Yuhao's right palm when she twisted her body and punched out, but an immense gravitational power emerged from the center of Hu Yuhao's fist at this moment. His right arm trembled at the same time, and his shoulder dislocated just like that, making his arm a few inches longer. Hu Yuhao wanted to rely on that minute difference to strike Wang Choa before she could hit him. Wang Choa gave her all in this punch. She was as dominant as she could be, and Hu Yuhao's right fist's gravitational force was strong, but it couldn't move her at all. However, Hu Yuhao's aim wasn't to use the controlling crane-capturing dragon to pull Wang Choa over. He wanted to use that suction force so that his fist could land on her body before her fist could reach him. The suction force and dislocation were completed seamlessly. He raised his left hand at the same time and guarded his chest with his palm. Thwack! Hu Yuhao's dislocated right arm was ultimately one step ahead. Hu Yuhao couldn't be bothered with the minor details in such a dire situation. His right palm that was being pulled forward by his controlling crane-capturing dragon touched Wang Choa's chest on her left side. Wang Choa's aura had been raised to its peak condition, but her body now quivered strongly, and her aura immediately plummeted as her entire body froze. The Empress palm, snowless glacier. Yes, that seemingly harmless and floating palm embodied the Snow Empress' most powerful strike. Wang Choa was still too careless after she tricked Hu Yuhao. She had not expected Hu Yuhao to be able to dislocate his shoulder at will, she had not expected him to pull his palm forward with such a unique method, and she had not expected that his palm strike would contain such an effect. "It's so bouncy," was Hu Yuhao's first reaction before he was tossed into the air. Boom! Wang Choa's heavy right fist hammered into Hu Yuhao's left palm before slamming into his chest and sending him flying 100 meters into the distance. Hu Yuhao's ultimate ice domain was immediately dispelled at the same time. Boom! Hu Yuhao crashed violently to the ground, and almost vomited a mouthful of blood. He realized to his surprise that Wang Choa's seemingly fearsome fist contained more propulsion force than explosive impact, which meant she was showing him mercy after all. If she hadn't held back, her fist would still be weakened by his snowless glacier, but she would have still heinously wounded him. He would have vomited several mouthfuls of blood, and several bones would have been broken. Hu Yuhao would still have won, but he would have had to pay a heavy price for that victory. The snowflakes dissipated, and Wang Choa's body was revealed. She was just standing there, motionless. Her face was as black as could be, and nobody knew whether it was because she had been struck by Hu Yuhao's snowless glacier, or because some fellow had accidentally touched one of her sensitive parts. Hu Yuhao stood up as he rubbed his chest. Yang Shaozhes looked over, and his eyes showed doubt. Even he couldn't determine who had won this round with the snowy dance of ultimate ice blocking his vision. Hu Yuhao forced a laugh and said, "I won. I froze her over." He couldn't even be bothered with regulating his breathing as he spoke, and he quickly walked towards Wang Choa. "Are you kidding me?" The snowless glacier landed directly on her chest. Her heart would have been frozen over in an instant no matter how powerful or how strong she is. "Her life will be in danger if I don't help her out of this." Hu Yuhao walked briskly up to Wang Choa. He discovered that Wang Choa hadn't lost consciousness. At the very least, her eyes were still flowing with sharp hostility and murderous rage, but she was just standing there, and couldn't move at all. She was naturally immobile as her heart had been frozen. Any attempt at moving around would cause her veins to explode, and she would die. Hu Yuhao suddenly realized that he had messed up. He realized to his surprise that he had frozen Wang Choa's heart, which meant that he had to start from her heart when withdrawing his snowless glacier's intense coldness. That also meant, what do I do? Everyone's looking. Do I just go up and rub a few times? That's not very appropriate. This clearly wasn't the time for contemplation. He grabbed his right arm with his left hand and fixed his dislocated arm before he retrieved a Class 6 milk bottle and speedily absorbed soul power from it. He forced a smile as he said to Wang Chua, I didn't mean for that to happen. You seemed like you were going to kill me, so I had to use everything I had. Furthermore, I didn't think it would have been so coincidental. That was an emergency, so you can just pretend nothing happened after this. Why don't you close your eyes? I'm going to start healing you. I'm extremely worried, and it is my duty to help you, so I'm just healing you. I don't mean anything else. Snowflakes appeared once more as he spoke. However, it wasn't the snowy dance of ultimate ice anymore, it was just the Empress chill. The tiny snow lady glowed with orangish golden light as she fluttered behind Hua Yuhao's back. She pointed into the sky with her little finger, and the snowflakes around her immediately started rippling as they enveloped both Hua Yuhao and Wang Chua's bodies. He didn't dare to heal Wang Chua like that in front of Wang Dong, so he had no choice but to provide some cover for himself. Of course, Hua Yuhao would definitely explain this as an attempt to protect Wang Chua's reputation. Hua Yuhao grabbed Wang Chua around her waist as the flurry of snowflakes concealed them. He dispelled the ice explosion before he pressed his right hand on her left chest as he rubbed gently, and he gradually withdrew his snowless glacier's savage and formidable chill. He wasn't having any indecent thoughts at all. She was frozen. It was still bouncy before this, but it suddenly felt as hard as a rock. The snowless glacier's effects were excessively powerful, and it wasn't as easy to withdraw as the ice explosion was. This was especially so when it had taken effect on the heart, and taking it back was a slow and gradual process where Yuhao gradually began to feel that the blood in Wang Chua's body was finally starting to flow and smoothen out. Her physique was just so formidable, and her heart stopping for a short period of time wouldn't threaten her life. However, he started to feel as if something was wrong, and the hard rock in his hands slowly became a soft and springy steamed bun. Are you feeling better? Hua Yuhao tried his best to make himself sound calm, and his movements began to slow. He realized that there seemed to be a little protrusion shifting around beneath his palm. Is it nice to touch? Wang Chua muttered coldly, it feels pretty good after thawing it. Hua Yuhao carefully shifted his hands away, but his answer was sincere. Wang Chua screamed at the top of her voice. Hua Yuhao. Her leg swung through the air like a whip. Hua Yuhao hurtled through the air like a cannonball. He seemed to fly a little further than he did before. The snowflakes disappeared. The tiny snow lady was still hovering in the air, and she seemed a little dazed. Her eyes followed Hua Yuhao's body through the air, and only then did she turn around and hurriedly chase after him. Wang Chua was just standing there, her enchanting frame was quivering as tears welled up in her eyes. She screamed once more, all you know how to do is bully me. She planted her right foot on the ground after this exclamation, and she made another crater in the soul dueling arena before her entire body transformed into a golden lightning streak as she disappeared in a flash. Hua Yuhao was flung from that kick to a place not far from his companions. Wang Chua's kick wasn't as controlled as before, and even though Hua Yuhao's arms managed to block it in time, he was kicked until he couldn't take his next breath, and his eyes turned black as he fainted and collapsed on the ground just like that. Silence. The entire field was silent. The same thought surfaced in everyone's minds when they heard Wang Chua near hysterical exclamation. All you know how to do is bully me. What did he to do her Yuhao? Wang Dong darted forward and came beside Hua Yuhao. She didn't touch his body, but grasped his hands and checked his condition and vitals. Wang Chua's kick was heavy, but she wasn't trying to kill him. Hua Yuhao had just fainted on the ground, and he wasn't severely injured. Yang Shaozhe was a little speechless with this outcome, and he swiftly came before Hua Yuhao. How is it? Is he all right? Wang Dong's expression was as calm as ever. He's fine. The impact was overly forceful, and he fainted from the sudden impact. He should recover after resting for a little while. Yang Shaozhe tilted his head and said, today's practice combat will end here. You guys can take him back to rest right now, yes? Thank you, Dean Yang. Wang Dong began to carry Hua Yuhao over her shoulders. Bei Bei, Shu Sanxia, and He Kai too wanted to help, but she shook her head and rejected them all. Hua Yuhao was slung over her back, his hands naturally hanging slack in front of her. Wang Dong grit her teeth and strode out of the soul dueling arena with a calm expression on her face. Her pretty eyes gradually turned red only after she left through the soul dueling arena's main gate. Tears began to well up in her eyes as the thought of what had just transpired spun around in her head continuously. Even though she didn't know exactly what had happened, she had interacted with Wang Chua many times, and Wang Chua's ice-cold personality gave everyone a strong and lasting impression. However, Wang Chua was nowhere near as cold and indifferent then, and that was especially so when she screamed those last words. Wang Dong felt as if there was a heavy hammer pounding on her chest. Yuhao, you. Tears trickled down her cheeks soundlessly, and Wang Dong picked up her pace as she hugged Hua Yuhao's legs tightly. She didn't want her companions to see her fragile side. No matter how much faith she had in Hua Yuhao, she had seen everything with her own eyes, and it would only mean he wasn't in her heart if she still didn't have any ill feelings about this. It was only because he meant too much to her that her heartache was so intense. A girl's thoughts would be vastly different from a guy once her thoughts started getting into a blind alley. Wang Dong felt as if it wasn't impossible that Hu Yuhao had feelings for Wang Chua. In the end, Wang Chua looked more like the goddess of light than she did, and Wang Chua wasn't inferior to her in terms of looks, figure, or abilities. Wang Dong didn't have any advantage over Wang Chua except for the time that she had spent together with him. Wang Dong deeply believed that Hu Yuhao liked her. However, that didn't mean he couldn't like someone else at the same time. Her second uncle had remarked before that men were generally capable of generous affection. But I can't accept that. I have to be the only person in my lover's heart. She began to sob even more uncontrollably as she continued to think in this direction. There was no way she could accept sharing a lover with someone else. Hu Yuhao was still unconscious, or, if he had known what Wang Dong was thinking, he would have told her exasperatedly, "My dear, you're thinking too much." Wang Dong carried Hu Yuhao all the way back to the sea god's pavilion before she placed him down on the bed. She took his outer clothes off and helped him wipe his face, and took care of him so that he could sleep more comfortably. Wang Dong took a chair and sat silently beside him. Her tears were no longer flowing, but her expression was still as dark as ever, and the image of Hu Yuhao interacting with Wang Chua echoed continuously in her mind. Wang Dong's heart became increasingly confused and disorganized the more she thought about it, because she was sure that Wang Chua looked at Hu Yuhao drastically differently from how she looked at other people. Even though her eyes couldn't be described as passionate, at least they weren't as cold as they usually were. She thought back to when she had found them inside the Great Stardow Forest, and when Wang Chua was lying on Hu Yuhao's thigh. Did they develop true feelings for each other through suffering? She hadn't thought much about it then because she chose to trust him. But what about today? What did Wang Chua mean when she exclaimed like that? Why did Hu Yuhao choose to conceal them by releasing his domain once more? What happened between them when he did that? Wang Dong's face became paler as she continued to think. At this moment, Hu Yuhao was completely submerged within his spiritual world. What a brutal kick. I just wanted to save her. Hu Yuhao's thoughts were full of exasperation and frustration. He didn't sleep for too long after fainting. However, he was unable to directly control his body when he woke up, and he realized to his surprise that his consciousness had entered his spiritual sea. His spiritual sea's vastness was far greater than before, his boundless spiritual sea torrential as tidal waves surged around it, while dense spiritual power undulations circulated like currents. He had also showed mercy when he fought Wang Chua. Otherwise, the outcome would have been entirely different if he had used his Eye of Destiny with all his controlling abilities at the beginning. He didn't know when he could truly wake up. Chua, why did you have to shout like that? Your scream will bring me great trouble. Hu Yuhao didn't know that Wang Dong was thinking in all the wrong directions, but he was absolutely certain that everyone would misunderstand because of her exclamation. More importantly, he actually did touch somewhere that he wasn't supposed to touch, and he couldn't blame Wang Chua for that. I've been wronged. Hu Yuhao shouted at the top of his lungs within his spiritual sea. He really hadn't meant for that to happen. He had felt immense pressure from her, as Wang Chua was the strongest person he had ever faced among others of the same age. Bei Bei and Shu Sanxia were also powerful, but their strength was very different from Wang Chua's style. Wang Chua was the kind to achieve victory with a single strike, just like when he battled Ji Juechen. How different could the two of them be? The reason why she was terrifying was because of her explosive power. The frightening offensive force generated from the collision after her explosive attack made Hu Yuhao numb just thinking about it. This wasn't a sensation that Bei Bei or Shu Sanxia could give him. He didn't know what Wang Chua's attitude toward him was like during this battle. She had saved him at the last minute inside the Great Stardow Forest, and Hu Yuhao couldn't develop any negative thoughts about her no matter what happened, as she had saved his life. This was the reason he decided to grind her down with his domain, so that neither of them would be hurt no matter who emerged victorious. He had never expected Wang Chua to erupt in that fashion, and that instance of explosive anger made Hu Yuhao feel as if his life was in danger. It was instinctive for him to give everything he had under such circumstances, and he never thought that he would accidentally touch Wang Chua's heart with his snowless glacier. This was a bitter misunderstanding. The snowless glacier was extremely powerful once it took effect on Hu Yuhao's target. If Hu Yuhao hadn't saved her, Wang Chua would have been done for. He had had no choice but to save her, and he couldn't waste a single second. So, he had saved her, but the deed brought great trouble upon himself. But what other choice did he have? Wang Chua's flying kick made Hu Yuhao feel so aggrieved, and the real reason why he fainted was because of what she had shouted. There was almost no way for him to remedy this misunderstanding. How am I going to explain this to Dong? Hu Yuhao stared at the vast spiritual sea before him with a bitter look on his face. He really didn't know what to say. Do I have to tell Wang Dong the truth, that I touched Wang Chua somewhere I really shouldn't have? In that case, wouldn't Dong be infuriated? However, how else do I explain it if I don't tell her the truth? What outrageous acts have you committed now, you rascal? Why do you look so despondent? A lazy voice suddenly rang out from all directions at that moment. Hua Yuhao's melancholic frown immediately froze when he heard this voice. In the next moment, an indescribable elation erupted from his eyes. Brother Skydream, where are you? He leapt to his feet, and controlled his consciousness to form a body as he flew into the space above his spiritual sea. He didn't care about anything else as he shouted as loudly as he could. Yes, that lazy voice belonged to the Skydream Iceworm. Skydream and Iceworm and the Ice Empress had been hibernating ever since the Snow Empress entered the state of polarity that day, sending Hua Yuhao's spiritual sea into turmoil, and forcing Electrolux to burn his own divine sense to save the others. A long time had passed since then, and he hadn't heard anything from either of them. Hua Yuhao had attempted to awaken them countless times. However, he couldn't feel the Ice Empress and Skydream Iceworm's auras inside his spiritual sea anymore. His initial despondence and sorrow immediately vanished when he heard Skydream's voice at this moment. Skydream was not just a friend and a companion to him, the Iceworm was also his savior, and he wouldn't be here today if he hadn't merged with the Skydream Iceworm back then. His martial soul had become increasingly powerful with Skydream's help, and he had obtained 4 million-year soul skills and a second martial soul, which allowed him to merge with both the Ice Empress and the Snow Empress afterward. The reason why Electrolux's divine sense entered his mind was also because Hua Yuhao's fusion with the Skydream Iceworm had produced intense spiritual undulations which had attracted his remnant. Skydream's position in Hua Yuhao's heart was extremely high and respected. He truly treated Skydream like his own brother. Skydream had truly changed his destiny, even though the Iceworm was just a little too lazy. I'm still alive. Why are you crying? Skydream's voice was tinged with deep emotions. Specks of golden light gradually rose up from Hua Yuhao's spiritual sea immediately afterwards, and combined to form Skydream's frame once more. However, the golden halo around his body had completely vanished. Hua Yuhao only realized that the face that he had conjured with his consciousness was flowing with tears when Skydream mentioned it. Hua Yuhao flew up before the Skydream Iceworm in a flash, and opened his arms wide before hugging the pudgy body while he leaned forcefully against the immense but soft frame. Brother Skydream, Teacher Electrolux has. Hua Yuhao began to bawl when he thought about all the unfortunate things that had happened. Skydream heaved a faint sigh and said, I know. Electrolux is truly a human that deserves our respect. Both the Ice Empress and I thought he was going to draw upon our strength to complete that ritual back then, but who could expect that he actually immolated himself in the end? He was the one that saved us all. Skydream Iceworm also began to lament and sigh with despair and regret at this point. Hua Yuhao sobbed for quite a long while before he recovered. He raised his head and said, How have you been, Brother Skydream? You should be fine by now. The halo around your body, a human face appeared on Skydream's head, and he made a human-like expression of exasperation. I've fused completely with you. Even though my spiritual origin is still sealed away, it's been completely submerged into your spiritual sea. This body is all that I have left, and this is only a projection of my consciousness. More accurately put, I am only a guest taking up residence in your body at this point, and you can chase me out anytime you want if you wish it. Of course, that also means it's over for me if that happens. Hua Yuhao replied angrily, Can you not make hypothetical speculations? That will never happen. Skydream chuckled and said, It's all right. I don't think I'll die even if I leave your spiritual sea now. Electrolux's ritual is truly miraculous, and it's made certain transformations to both the Ice Empress and me. Transformations? Hua Yuhao stared at him with a confused look. Skydream chided him, Have you grown stupid? Spirits. Are you trying to say that both the Ice Empress and I are not fusing our strengths and our spiritual imprints with you willingly? The truth is that we completed the spirit seal that day too. However, we are different from the Snow Empress in a way that our process was even more successful. The reason is because we fused together a long time ago, and we were already a part of you. Hua Yuhao's eyes widened and his jaw grew slack. Brother Skydream, are you saying that you've also become my spirit? Does that mean you can leave my body to fight? Skydream chortled and said, I'm not very good at fighting, although I can take a stroll outside. I'm not entirely your spirit yet, and I will only become one after a certain degree of conversion. Fortunately, I was smart enough back then to let you absorb imitation. Otherwise, you wouldn't be able to release your martial soul when I fully convert into your spirit. A thought crossed Hua Yuhao's mind and he said, Is that because the soul ring you attach to my body will be different from normal situations after you change into a million-year spirit? Skydream nodded and said, I don't have a soul ring for you, as my soul ring has long become part of your body. However, once I change to a spirit, the soul ring will also change to a certain extent. It will be different from the Snow Empress spirit. There's no way for me to tell what it will look like, but you'll find out when it happens. Hua Yuhao said, What else needs to be done before you can change into a spirit? Do you want to become a spirit, Skydream? Please don't force yourself if you don't want that. The human face that Skydream had conjured made an annoyed look as he said, Of course I do, you idiot. I will never be able to go outside if I remain like this, and I can only stay inside you. I can finally get out of here when I become a spirit. My memories and my intelligence were preserved during that ritual back then. I am extremely willing to become a spirit. Nothing much will happen to you when I become a spirit, because I'm not that adept with fighting in the first place. The most I can do is help you use some of the abilities that I have given you when necessary. The ritual is simple, all you have to do is sign the pact and it will be done. Hua Yuhao laughed and said, I won't be so courteous anymore, then. However, teacher mentioned before that I can't assimilate too many spirits, as it will consume too much of my spiritual power. You won't suck me dry, will you? Skydream replied angrily, why did I choose a fool like you all those years ago? I've already said that the ritual has been completed, and all that's left is the pact. Everything that needs to be absorbed has already been absorbed. Furthermore, my situation and the Ice Empress situation is different from the Snow Empress, as we were the first to have fused with you. This is the reason why we completed the fusion long ago, and we have provided our own spiritual power to integrate into your own, so we don't need your spiritual power anymore. Otherwise, we would have separated your spirit into pieces when you fused with the Snow Empress back then. Quickly now, give me that pact, so I can go outside and roam the world. Hua Yuhao wouldn't reject Skydream's request, and immediately began to chant the pact sealing spell that Electrolux had imparted to him. Hua Yuhao's torrential and tumultuous spiritual sea gradually began to calm during his incantation. Skydream said no more, and just levitated silently in midair. Hua Yuhao's eyes slowly turned golden as he raised his right hand, and drew runes in the sky continuously that drifted towards Skydream. Skydream gradually closed his eyes. His enormous frame became a little smaller with every rune that landed on his body. Gentle spiritual power circulated through his body, and his aura was slowly undergoing mystical transformations. Hua Yuhao's senses were the most acute, and the first thing he felt was separation. Skydream was being converted to his vassal spirit, and that meant Skydream was separating himself from his own spiritual origin. It also meant that Skydream was officially leaving his spiritual origin to Hua Yuhao. The Skydream Iceworm's virtual body was growing smaller, but it was also becoming more material, and his life energy was becoming increasingly dense. The Skydream Iceworm's two supreme treasures were his spiritual origin that he had bestowed upon Hua Yuhao, and his life origin imprint formed by 1,000,000 years worth of life energy. At this moment, his life origin imprint seemed like it was being awakened as the pact took effect. He continually released immense amounts of life energy, which continuously fused with Hua Yuhao. The ripples gradually made Skydream's body even more solid and material. Hua Yuhao finally released the final rune successfully, and the pact was complete. Skydream's frame had become small enough to fit on a palm, and he suddenly soared into the sky as a white streak of light. His tiny golden eyes were filled with excitement. There was a golden imprint on his forehead, looking just like a vertical eye. It was the pact that bound him to Hua Yuhao. Just like Skydream had said before, there was a huge rift between completing the process with the Snow Empress back then and completing the process with Skydream at this moment. Hua Yuhao didn't feel any abnormal undulations in his spiritual power or his soul power. The pact was already completed. Skydream had officially become Hua Yuhao's spirit from this moment onwards, Hua Yuhao's second spirit. Whoosh! Skydream's body flashed and disappeared within Hua Yuhao's spiritual sea just like that. Hua Yuhao's consciousness returned to his physical body, and he subconsciously opened his eyes. It was already completely dark outside. Wang Dong was gone, and Hua Yuhao was the only person left in the room. The chair that Wang Dong had sat on while she was watching over him was still beside his bed. Wang Dong had left when the sky turned dark. Hua Yuhao had still been asleep, but his vitals had returned to normal, and everything seemed fine. Wang Dong didn't know how to face him when he woke up, so she chose to run away from this problem. From her perspective, everything might be different when she woke up the next morning, or everyone would just forget about what had happened before. Perhaps Hua Yuhao would give her a reasonable explanation. Despondence and grief was exhausting, and Wang Dong had fallen into a deep sleep once she returned to her room. Brother Skydream. Hua Yuhao swiftly sat up on his bed and called out softly, "Hey, you can't find me, you can't find me." Skydream's voice rang out in Hua Yuhao's mind. Hua Yuhao chortled and said, "Have you forgotten the spiritual detection you gave me?" He activated spiritual detection at once and surveyed the entire room. "You're cheating." Skydream's exasperated and unconvinced voice could be heard once more. Hua Yuhao finally found him using spiritual detection. Skydream was on his body, but hidden in the folds of his clothes. He lifted Skydream from the folds of his clothes. Hua Yuhao didn't know whether to laugh or cry when he saw the Skydream Iceworm's appearance. Skydream was like an absolute miniature version of his former body. He was a bit over 6 inches long, and only as thick as a pinky finger. His entire body was translucent, like white jade, and his subtle movements gave off a faint aroma. Skydream's frame was extremely tiny, but the life energy that he released gave Hua Yuhao the feeling that he had obtained another piece of life gold. Skydream's tiny golden eyes were like yellow diamonds in the night sky as they sparkled brilliantly. Skydream, why do I feel like your spirit is different from the Snow Empress spirit? Hua Yuhao asked doubtfully. The Skydream iceworm answered proudly, of course it is. Don't forget, I'm a million-year soul beast, and I fused with your body a long time ago. I have retained my intelligence in its entirety, and I am now an independent entity, while I do not need to absorb your strength to maintain myself anymore. Come. His tiny frame started wiggling in Hua Yuhao's palm as he spoke. Hua Yuhao looked on in shock as a streak of light emerged from his storage-type soul tool and rushed in Skydream's direction. Hua Yuhao would have forgotten about it if Skydream hadn't drawn it out. Wasn't this the layer of skin that Skydream had shed after they fused inside the Great Stardow Forest back in the day? They had relied on this skin to restrain the Ice Empress before they convinced her to fuse with him. Skydream's shed skin glowed with a faint white radiance, and gently covered his body as he continued to wriggle. Skydream opened his mouth and bit down on the center of the skin. His body shone with a faint layer of white and golden light as he gradually merged with the shed skin. The light on the skin became more intense, and it began to shrink, just like what had happened to Skydream in Hua Yuhao's spiritual sea. The skin slowly plastered to and fused with Skydream's body. I understand, Hua Yuhao suddenly exclaimed, his eyes as wide as ever while he stared at the Skydream iceworm. His eyes were filled with incredulity. Skydream was almost undergoing a reincarnation, and that meant that the life origin imprint that he had integrated into Hua Yuhao's body all those years ago was being extracted to fuse with Skydream's shed skin and form a brand new Skydream iceworm. Skydream was making himself a brand new body, and would be able to survive independently even if he didn't return to Hua Yuhao's body. He could even survive easily in a place far away from Hua Yuhao. How is this possible? You're creating life, brother Skydream, Hua Yuhao exclaimed with wide eyes and a slack jaw. The skin finally minimized completely, and fused seamlessly with Skydream. Skydream tossed his head from side to side. Create life? That's not possible, and neither am I the creator. How do I put it? I can call this pseudo-life creation. I guess my life origin imprint has been preserved extremely well. Under such circumstances, I can be considered independent after completing the pact with you. The Snow Empress life imprint integrated with her embryo when she was converting to it, and her life imprint ultimately dissipated with her divine sense when the polar reversal happened, a situation that will definitely arise when human soul masters assimilate spirits. I'm different, as I had already fused with you beforehand, and I was a lot more powerful than you were back then, so my life origin imprint was excellently preserved. It is the reason why I can rely on my own life energy to absorb the origin energy of heaven and earth to sustain my own life energy after existing independently from our pact. However, that doesn't mean that I can create life. I don't have to rely on your strength anymore, but I still have to rely on this pact between us. My body will crumble without this pact, and that also means that everyone will still perish if you die, me, the Snow Empress, and the Ice Empress, who has yet to awaken. I'm different from them because I can leave your body for a short period of time, and I don't have to return to your body on normal days, although these are only the main differences. Of course, I have more autonomy. Even though I've given my spiritual imprint to you and I can no longer unleash all those spiritual type abilities by myself, my life energy has given me another way to help you. I'm a million-year spirit, and also the only million-year spirit on the entire continent. I can't be entirely useless, can I? Skydream was feeling a little proud at this moment. Release your martial soul and take a look. Hua Yuhao followed his instructions and released his spirit eyes. He was the only person in the room, so there was no need to hide the color of his soul rings. 5 soul rings appeared one after another, 1 white, and 4 black soul rings. His imitation had become a 10,000-year soul skill when he absorbed Skydream's spiritual power. However, Hua Yuhao had no attention for his 4 black soul rings. His eyes were immediately fixed upon his first white million-year soul ring. This white soul ring was clean like jade under normal circumstances, and was not much different from a 10-year soul ring, and it wouldn't display golden patterns like the Ice Empress's soul ring. However, the white soul ring was now different. A soul ring was a virtual projection of light shaped like a circle. Light was transparent, and only varied in terms of color and how bright it was. At this moment, Hua Yuhao could clearly feel that his first soul ring was no longer made of light. The white soul ring drifted into the sky, and Hua Yuhao could immediately feel that his 4 spiritual-type soul skills could be unleashed at any time. However, this white soul ring seemed like it had become entirely material. He raised his hand subconsciously and attempted to touch it. His hand would go through his other soul rings, as how could one touch light? However, Hua Yuhao felt warmth on his fingertips when he touched his first soul ring. Yes, that was a real sensation. The white ring had become tangible and solid, and felt like it was sculpted from jade. Hua Yuhao touched it gently, and he could feel as if his own spiritual power was being caressed as Skydream jumped lightly and flew up before Hua Yuhao's eyes. The soul ring has become solid. This is the power of my million-year spirit. Watch carefully. Skydream's body contorted as he spoke, and he landed on the solidified soul ring. His body immediately turned golden as he started circling around the solidified soul ring. Circle after circle of golden light began encircling the first soul ring, and the soul ring actually turned golden in the blink of an eye. The soul ring drifted into the air and paused for a moment above Hua Yuhao's head before floating forwards, and a golden layer of light covered the entire soul ring, transforming into a golden shield that was about half a meter in diameter as it hovered in front of Hua Yuhao. A shield? Hua Yuhao asked with astonishment. Life-reflecting shield. This is my spirit's ability. What do you think? The name is really cool, isn't it? Sounds pretty normal, Hua Yuhao answered truthfully. Normal? Skydream's voice became several pitches higher. You actually think it sounds normal? Do you know that my life-reflecting shield uses my own life energy as its foundations, and it's completed by using your spiritual sea as a framework? It can reflect any physical and spiritual attack. If your opponent is weaker than you are, everything will be reflected, and the attack will be partially reflected even if your opponent is stronger than you are. You have to take everything else, but the life-reflecting shield will absorb and dispel part of the attack, and my life energy will take the hit. The strike will never touch you unless my life energy can't take it anymore. Hua Yuhao's eyes widened. This wasn't just better than normal, that was a godly skill that could protect his life. However, Hua Yuhao immediately thought about a few issues, and hurriedly asked, Brother Skydream, what's the surface area that this shield can cover? How many times can I use it in one day? If my opponent's attack is too strong, will you get hurt? Skydream was satisfied with Hua Yuhao's questions, and he said happily, you do have a conscience after all, and you're concerned about me. You can use this shield as many times as you want in theory, but in reality I recommend that you not use this shield more than 3 times in a day. It isn't because I'm afraid that too much of my life energy will be expended, it's actually because this skill uses your spiritual sea as its framework. I am expending life energy when using it, but you will be consuming spiritual power. If you use it too much or inappropriately, you might even damage your spiritual origin. 3 times a day is the most reasonable number. I don't think you have to think too much about what happens when the opponent's attack is too powerful. If your opponent's strike is so powerful that it can obliterate my immense life energy in its entirety, what chance do you have left to live? We will just die together. The consumption of my life energy is related to the reflection. Do you still remember your life guardian blade? It can absorb other physical beings' life energy, while my life-reflecting shield can absorb any living being's life energy. More accurately put, when my life-reflecting shield reflects the opponent's attack, the reflected attack will definitely take effect on his or her body and cause harm, which will be converted into life energy to replenish my own. This means that consumption is not a big deal for me unless the opponent is way too powerful. My life energy can also be replenished through you, or if I eat something for restoration. Of course, I only eat good things, and I have been eyeing and craving that grilled fish of yours. Make a few for me to try when it's convenient. Hua Yuhao's heart was racing. The grilled fish is easy. What about the area of effect? Skydream answered mildly, only in front of you. Were you hoping that I could provide a 360-degree protective barrier for you? No. Frontal protection is enough. Hua Yuhao stared at the shield before him, in awe at his good fortune. He had always been lacking in terms of defense. The Ice Empress armor was no longer enough to satisfy his defensive needs, and this was especially true since the Ice Empress was still in hibernation, so his Ice Empress armor couldn't evolve any further. He hadn't dared to meet force with force when he faced off against Wang Chua, but similar circumstances in the future would be a lot different now that he had this life-reflecting shield. There's nothing I can do against Soul Tools. I can only block Soul Master's attacks, Skydream added thoughtfully. You can't block Soul Tools? But Soul Tools are also released by Soul Master's soul power, Hua Yuhao asked in surprise. Skydream shook his head and said, I've said before that this is a life-reflecting shield, and I can only rely on the sensation on my life energy to reflect attacks to ensure accuracy. Soul Tools are fired through metal components, and there's no way I can sense that. The defensive capability is still there, but there's no way I can reflect that attack. This is especially true for those stationary Soul Tools, and my defensive capabilities will probably be worse than normal against them. Therefore, you should try to avoid using this skill when you're dealing with Soul Tools, alright? Hua Yuhao acknowledged. He was already extremely satisfied despite that limitation. In the end, a soul skill couldn't be all-powerful, as wouldn't one be invincible if that was possible. Skydream's soul skill was already a great boost to his defensive capabilities. Skydream yawned. Alright, that's all. I'm going to sleep now, don't disturb me. His body stretched as he spoke, landing on Hua Yuhao's left hand as he spoke. He wrapped himself 5 times around Hua Yuhao's 4th finger, transforming into a multi-spiraled jade ring. If one didn't know what it was and perceived it with the naked eye, nobody would be able to tell that this was actually a life form. Hua Yuhao was a little exasperated and at a loss as he stared at Skydream. He decided to pick this place. Hua Yuhao was still wearing his Starlight Sapphire Storage Type Soul tool on his middle finger on the same hand. He was now wearing 2 rings on the same hand, and he was starting to look like a parvenu. Can you find another place to rest, Brother Skydream? Why don't you return to my spiritual sea to sleep? Hua Yuhao probed. No, I'm not going back there, it's so boring inside. I will not go back unless you can wake her up. Furthermore, I need to absorb nutrients from heaven and earth to sustain my life energy in my semi-life form state. Are you asking me to absorb your life energy from within your spiritual sea? When Skydream mentioned the Ice Jade Empress Scorpion, Hua Yuhao hurriedly asked, How is the Ice Empress, Brother Skydream? Is she alright? Skydream sounded a little gloomy as he said, She's alright, but she expended too much energy when she burned her origin back then, so she needs a longer time in hibernation to recover. If you come across any ice-type herbs or whatnot, you should eat more of them, as that will help her recover. Oh, I miss her so much. I am going to find her in my dreams, so you better not disturb me. When you want to use the life-reflecting shield, just release your martial soul and channel soul power into my body. I will release the shield naturally, alright? You can go ahead and sleep, and I'll get something delicious for you to eat afterwards. Hua Yuhao stared a little helplessly at Skydream. He had lived for 1,000,000 years, but he had probably spent more than 999,000 years sleeping. Wait a minute. Skydream was just about to fall asleep when he abruptly sprang up from Hua Yuhao's finger and hovered before him. His tiny golden eyes were full of doubt and confusion as he silently levitated above Hua Yuhao's left hand, as if he were trying to sense something. What's wrong, Brother Skydream? Skydream shook his head and signaled for him to be quiet. Skydream's tiny eyes sparkled with faint golden light, and Hua Yuhao's spirit eyes were naturally released in the next moment. Hua Yuhao felt the waves in his spiritual sea become tumultuous as waves of spiritual power were released one after another, while Skydream's body gradually turned golden in color. Skydream could still use Hua Yuhao's spiritual power, as they were connected through the pact after he had changed into a spirit. But this deployment was different from before. Skydream was using his own strength before this, but he could only use Hua Yuhao's strength now, and Hua Yuhao could immediately stop the process if he wasn't willing. Skydream drifted forward after he turned golden and landed on the Starlight Sapphire ring on the middle finger of Hua Yuhao's left hand. He flew into the air once more after a short moment. His voice sounded solemn as he said, Why do you have a spiritual imprint in your ring, Yuhao? No, this should be a spiritual seal, and it's extremely powerful as well. Do you know that it's dangerous for you if others' spiritual imprints remain attached to you? They can spy on you, and they can even trigger some things in your body to cause you harm. Maybe they will even choose the most important checkpoints of your cultivation to disrupt you. Quickly, take it out. I will help you dispel that spiritual seal. Spiritual seal? I don't think there's any, Hua Yuhao answered in shock. His spiritual power was formidable, and there was no way he wouldn't know if someone had left a spiritual seal on any of his possessions. Hua Yuhao suddenly thought about something. He realized what was going on, and he said, I know what you're referring to. There is no need to worry, Brother Skydream. He raised his left hand as he spoke. The Starlight Sapphire ring flickered with blue light, and a tiny pouch appeared in his hands. It was the one Wang Dong had handed to him back then. Skydream's head swayed faintly, and he immediately nodded and said, Yes, this is the one. What's this? Hua Yuhao said. The Clear Sky Sect's sect leader asked Wang Dong to pass it to me. It's a pouch, and I don't know what's written inside. Uncle Niu Tian added a seal so that Wang Dong wouldn't take a sneak peek at its contents, but I can't open it yet because my cultivation isn't high enough. I reckon it probably contains some words of encouragement. Skydream insisted on his opinion and said, It's not a good thing for you to have someone else's spiritual seal on you. Let me help you open it. This video will end here. Thank you for watching.